Greetings, groovers, seekers of sophistication, lovers of literature. How you doing? 'Tis I, Nicholas of Hennegan, and we're back after the summer break on Resonance 104.4 FM, which of course stands for Flipping Marvellous, with a new series of Literary London. And we're getting stuck straight into it because there's a big event happening in West London, in Chiswick, over the next few days. In fact, I think it's kind of on now. This is for the weekend of the 12th of September 2020. And I'm very pleased to welcome once more into my Zoom window, which is all we do, the rather brilliant Torin Douglas. Thank you for popping in, Torin. I'm not quite sure. I can't give you a cup of coffee or anything now, can I?
I've got one here, but thank you, Nick. And it's lovely to see you. It's been so odd not being able to meet people, but Zoom has been a bit of a substitute anyway.
It has, hasn't it? Yeah. How have you coped? Because actually, you're here to talk. You're a director. Is that the right title? Director of the book festival.
Director of the Chiswick Book Festival. That's right.
How's 2020 been generally for you? I mean, before we get onto the specifics of the book festival.
Well, I have to say there are worse places to be locked down than Chiswick, and we are lucky. We've got Chiswick House. We happen to have a garden. The shops seem to have been functioning. People appear to have been obeying the rules pretty much, and so actually, I mean, if it was going to be anywhere, I'd rather be doing it in Chiswick than anywhere else. But it's still been very strange. St Michael and All Angels Church has been doing all its services on Facebook Live for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's now open again, but that was a novelty. We ran the Bedford Park Festival in June digitally, and that has been a great warm-up for the Chiswick Book Festival, because we discovered lots of things there that we could do and what we should not do and so on. So we've made the most of it, but it's still very odd.
It is, isn't it? I had 3 shows ready to go to the Edinburgh Festival this year, which of course and we were talking to Cal, who's a local poet, I think you know Cal, about a festival that he had arranged, and they almost thought about cancelling it, and then there was this kind of spirit of I say the bulldog spirit is perhaps the wrong term, but this notion of, you know, we should not allow ourselves to be beaten by this, and they went ahead and did it. Was it always going to happen online, the book festival, the Chiswick Festival?
We took I mean, we were obviously watching how the rules were changing and what was going to be allowed, but pretty much early on we decided, partly because our audience tends to be, should I say, the older side of 50, and partly because book festivals really cram everybody together, and anybody who's ever been to a Chiswick Book Festival knows that's part of the fun. You've got queues, you've got people moving in and out of the church and then out of Chiswick House, and the bustle is part of it, and that wasn't going to work. So we then thought, well, do we do a halfway house? And actually it was much better to say, no, we're going to do it digitally. We're going to use all of the different technology that's available to us, and we will do it that way. And the big breakthrough for us came because we always knew we could do stuff on Zoom, but people are getting a bit used to Zoom, a bit fed up with Zoom. So it's fine for certain things, but you won't want to do it all the time. And the breakthrough for us was when St Michael and All Angels agreed that we could film some of our interviews in the church, suitably distanced, and it's huge. So with very few people in there, that makes sense. So we've now got a wonderful mix of filmed interviews, Zoom, and podcasts. And we've had huge support from the 2 big Chiswick media, the Chiswick Calendar, who've done lots of podcasts for us, but mostly Chiswick Buzz, who have been videoing partly our Zoom, but also these interviews in St Michael's. And yesterday, I'm speaking to you now on the Friday, we showed the wonderful video of our session in Chiswick House, which we recorded earlier in the week, and I can tell you more about that.
Yes, I mean, let's talk about the highlights. So we'll talk a bit about Chiswick as well, because it's obviously I'm very fond of the old place now. Described by one of the newspapers as the most writerly place in the world. And I know you've had you've sort of been involved in this, looking at some of the incredible world-beating works that were created by writers living in Chiswick. We'll perhaps talk about that in a while. But so, what was the genesis of the book festival in Chiswick, and what are the highlights for this year?
Well, this is our 12th festival, and I launched it 12 years ago with the Vicar of St Michael and All Angels, Father Kevin Morris, who is a great lover of the arts and a great believer in the arts as part of the way churches can just bring people into church, but also discuss important issues and just bring people together. So we already ran the Bedford Park Festival. That's been going for 50 years. We had the venues, we had the church, we had St Michael and All Angels Hall. We knew there were other venues in Chiswick that we knew. And because we'd done that, and we'd always had a book event in the Bedford Park Festival, we thought, well, it can't be that difficult to run a book festival. We've got all this. Why don't we go for it? And we were just about to go for it in 2007, when on the grapevine, we heard that Ealing Council, which does lots of summer festivals, jazz and comedy and things like that, which it normally does in the middle of Ealing, suddenly had decided that it did very little for this end of the borough, and it was going to launch a literary festival, and it was going to do it on the green opposite St Michael and All Angels in September in those great big circus tents that it uses. Now, that was exactly when we were going to launch our festival. Unfortunately, we found out about it in time, because it would have been bonkers to have 2 book festivals, cheek by jowl, in September. So we threw our lot in with them. We offered to help them program some of it. And so that was the first one, the Ealing Literary Festival. That ran for 2 years in those tents. I have to say it wasn't particularly well run. We did what we are good at, was we had a party. We invited all of the authors to come and have drinks in St Michael and All Angels on the Saturday evening, and that's a tradition that we maintained right the way through. And then when they went back into Ealing Library for the 3rd year, that's when we pounced and said, right, we're launching the Chiswick Book Festival. And that was in 2009. I thought we'd start slowly and build. Our partners in it were the then head of Midas PR, Jax Thomas, and her husband, Malcolm Edwards, who was vice chair of Orion Books. Their idea of starting small was Antonia Fraser, Anthony Horowitz, Jacqueline Wilson, Michael Frayn, and at the end of it, I thought, well, this has been great, but how do we follow that? And then, of course, we realised there are lots and lots of authors and lots of books. You're never going to run out. But so that's how it started.
And you're a writer yourself, aren't you? I mean, I first came across you when you were a journalist at LBC, and you worked for the palaces for a while, for the royal family for a while as well, didn't you? I think.
No, I have covered the royal family, but I have never worked for them. I've always been a journalist, and I always covered the media, and I loved the media as a beat because it means you can cover everything. So it's part showbiz, it's part business, it's part politics. The media has become more and more important in the time that I've been covering it, which is 40 years now. When I started, nobody thought media was a proper topic to discuss. And I was very lucky. I was working on, first of all, Campaign magazine and then Marketing Week magazine. And we were looking at the business side of media. And then I got a job on the Times to write a column about the media. That later moved to The Independent. And as you say, that's how I started working for LBC, because I did a program for them called Advertising World, which looked at the whole of the media. So that's what I've written about. And it's taken me into all sorts of areas. It took me into the BBC for 25 years. So I've covered all those things, but I've never actually done a proper job outside of journalism.
And have you got a book inside you yourself?
People keep asking that, and the answer is there are probably lots, but there are too many to even know where to start. So I've had one book published. It's called The Complete Guide to Advertising. You can buy it on Amazon, either for no pence plus the postage, or £42. That's a strange way that Amazon works. I'd suggest the former if I were you, but do buy it. I mean, it's a treat. It's a highly illustrated book about how advertising works, but it's got all of those great campaigns of the 1980s as my case histories, and that was a golden age for advertising. I loved covering it. It taught me a lot. But if you go on Amazon, just look for The Complete Guide to Advertising by Torin Douglas, you will certainly find a copy there which you can afford.
In fact, if you go to Maverick Theatre's Amazon Smile account, you'll also help a local theatre charity.
Oh,
I'm Nick Hennegan. This is Resonance 104.4 FM. It's literally London. We're talking with Torin Douglas, who is the director of the Chiswick Book Festival. And as well as listening to us in fabulous FM, you can also see us, because if you go to the Maverick Theatre YouTube page, I think it's the right one. We're quite new at the YouTube. It's only taken 12 years to get this far. You can actually see us. You can see Torin's very beautiful bookcase and my slightly shabby flat here. So let's go back to this festival then, Torin. What are some of the highlights still to come?
Well, I mentioned Antonia Fraser, and that was sort of deliberate because we have got her back this year for the first time since then. She was our very, very first speaker on that first night. And she was very complimentary. She said, "Oh, what a beautiful arts and crafts church, and what intelligent questions." In fact, I have just interviewed her a couple of weeks ago about her husband, Harold Pinter. And what I did was I spotted that The Caretaker, which Harold Pinter wrote in Chiswick when he was living at Chiswick High Road, it was 60 years ago. And it was the play that absolutely catapulted him into the big time. So I was going to mark that by asking Antonia and Michael Billington, who also lives in Chiswick and is his biographer, if they would recall Harold Pinter and talk about him. And we were going to do that. This was booked back last November. We were going to do it in the wonderful theatre at Arts Ed, the Andrew Lloyd Webber Foundation Theatre. We thought that was a very appropriate place to celebrate Harold Pinter. And they both agreed to do it, and we got very excited about it. Michael then informed me that Harold Pinter would have been 90 next month, so that made it more appropriate still. And it is exactly 15 years since he was awarded the Nobel Prize, one of two Nobel Prize winners who lived in Chiswick. The other, if you can't guess, is W.B. Yeats. And you mentioned how Chiswick was being hailed now as the most literary location in the UK. That has come out of our timeline of writers and books and our writers' trail. So I claim quite a lot of the credit for that, and I'm delighted to see Chiswick getting its due acknowledgement. But we've got Harold Pinter being talked about. We couldn't do it in the theatre because of COVID. I didn't know, because they're both in their 80s, whether they would actually want to reassemble. But once we're allowed to have the church and filming in the church, they both said yes straight away. And I have interviewed them. I have, even though I say it myself, it is a lovely interview. They are both on incredibly good form. And they talk very wisely but warmly about Harold Pinter as a man, his love of cricket, but also about his amazing works. And indeed, The Observer devoted a whole page last Sunday to Antonia's remarks in that interview. And tonight, I'm speaking on Friday. It's the first chance that anybody else will have a chance to watch that interview. What she was saying in that article is that she feels his film scripts have been overshadowed by his plays. She believes he was a very great script writer and film writer and screenwriter. And she would love for those films, The Go-Between and Accident and all the others, French Lieutenant's Woman, that all of those should be recognised. And in fact, she was urging somebody to put on a season of his films. I hope the BBC is listening.
Yes, absolutely. I'm surprised they haven't picked up on that with those anniversaries. They've obviously not got the keen mind of a Chiswick writer. And so, because it's sort of online, I mean, it's a bit of a crass question, but how are the finances for the festival? What's happening? Is it donation-based? Are you selling tickets to the virtual events? How's that worked?
It is donations and sponsorship. We couldn't have gone into this at all if we didn't have some backing. So I went to our sponsors, our regular sponsors, to see whether they would be interested, because we knew we couldn't sell tickets. No book festival has been selling tickets, or certainly right from the start it became established that book festivals wouldn't sell tickets. I know now some of them have started to do that, but certainly it wasn't going to be possible for us. So we knew it would be sponsorship and and donations. So there is a big donations button on our website. But without it being underwritten by our sponsors, we would not have gone into it, because there is no way we could make a loss on this. We are backed by St Michael and All Angels Church in terms of we use a lot of their facilities and so on, but we can't go into the red. So until I had something to pay for every filming session, we didn't go ahead with it. And we were very fortunate that Savills, our regular sponsor, they came forward straight away and gave us the money we needed to get started. The Art Society Chiswick, another regular diamond sponsor of ours, they came forward, and several of the schools made sure that we could have the Children's Book Festival, and others came in. So we knew we got the underpinning, but we really are relying on donations. And so some people have been very generous already, but we hope that it's during this weekend that people will actually donate. We hope that they will think what they would have spent on the tickets, and we'll be reminding them what tickets would normally have cost, which for most events was just £8. I mean, we have always kept the costs low. And we hope that they will think about what they would have spent, and if they've enjoyed all of the events that they have seen online, that they will donate accordingly. And if we cover our costs, and I say if, we will then do what we always do, which is give any of the profit to our charities. And we've got 3 great charities: Interact Stroke Support, who provide actors to read to stroke patients in hospitals, at Hammersmith Hospital; Doorstep Library, which provides readers to go into homes of children who otherwise wouldn't see books and hear about books; and the Felix Project, which provides food for charities and schools that would otherwise have gone to waste from shops and restaurants. So they're great charities, but unless we actually cover our costs, they're not going to get anything. So again, we would urge people to be generous.
And what's the best portal? Where do people go to experience the Chiswick Book Festival from, of course, now anywhere in the world?
I know, I mean, that is the great advantage, that it did get a bit crowded sometimes in St Michael and All Angels and in our marquees and so on. Anybody can now tune in from anywhere. So the basic place to go to is just our ordinary homepage, Chiswick Festival, chiswickbookfestival.net. And on that, you will see a link to our program page, which is the Speakers 2020 page. And so that will tell you everything that we've got, which is podcasts, it's videos, it's Zoom, and that will tell you a bit about all of the authors, when they're on, and so on. So that's the hub. But then we are using a variety of platforms to stream the materials. So on podcasts, the Chiswick Calendar and Bell Media, they're 2 podcast producers. So we refer people and link from that website to them. But overwhelmingly, it's Chiswick Buzz for the videos and the Zoom. And Chiswick Buzz have produced a live site, as they did for the Bedford Park Festival. And the link is now up on that. So if you go on the link, you will see, again, it's very clearly marked on the website. If you link to that, it will tell you what is coming up next. So, for example, on the Thursday and the Friday, we didn't have many events. So that was a holding page for most of the day, saying if you tune in at 5 o'clock, you'll see the poetry competition prize giving, and at 7 o'clock, you'll see Antonia Fraser. But over this weekend, we have been streaming live right from 9 o'clock in the morning, right through Saturday and Sunday. So at that stage, if you go onto that live channel, you will see what is on at the moment. And then at the end of every session, there'll be a card up saying, and this is what's on next. So you then refer back to the book festival site to see what you want to see.
It's fantastic, really. I mean, you know, there is some soul of goodness in things evil. Did I write that, or did Shakespeare? The sort of a positive. I missed the red wine, I have to say. One of the positives, it really seems to have brought the community together, and certainly the media elements of the community together, which is lovely. And briefly as well, we must just touch on the Chiswick timeline, because this is something, it's a great idea. I'm also on it, I found out, which thank you very much for that. I appear on it as one of the later editions. Just tell us about the Chiswick timeline and some of the incredible people who lived in this area of West London.
So you asked why we launched the festival. One of the reasons we launched a festival was because I felt Chiswick, well, I think everywhere needs to have a book festival. if you can't run a book festival in Chiswick, really, I mean, where can you? But I also felt that Chiswick had been neglected, that it wasn't seen as a great area for writers. It wasn't even seen as an area for writers at all. And yet Thackeray went to school here. The opening chapter of Vanity Fair is called Chiswick Mall. You can still see the house. Pinter, as I said, wrote The Caretaker in Chiswick High Road. John Osborne wrote Look Back in Anger on his houseboat at Chiswick. W.B. Yeats lived in Chiswick. There's a plaque to Alexander Pope. There's a plaque to Ian Forster. There are a lot of writers, and nobody seemed to be telling anybody about it. So once we got the book festival up and running and established, I turned my mind to how we could actually celebrate the writers and maybe catalogue them. And my inspiration for the Chiswick timeline of writers and books was the original Chiswick timeline, which is the timeline of art and maps under the bridges at Turnham Green tube station, which is such a wonderful venture. And it shows lots of, well, it shows the history of Chiswick as in maps, so you can see how it's grown, but also some of the great artworks from Hogarth, obviously, right through to Peter Blake, and their illustration, their artists' works looking at parts of Chiswick. So I suddenly thought, oh, well, we could have a Chiswick timeline of writers and books. It wouldn't be under the bridges at Turnham Green. It would be online. And because I was involved in a very small way in helping the timeline, the original timeline set up, I asked them, can we use your logo and can we use all your material and credit you? And they said yes. And that's really how it started. And at the time, I had no idea how many people we'd get on the timeline. And we initially focused on a writer's trail. They had done an art trail to go with the art, the Chiswick timeline of art. And we simply borrowed the format for that. Ours looks exactly the same as theirs. It's a map of Chiswick with 20 odd A to P on it, with notable locations. Only ours are writers rather than artists. And for those 21, I realised we actually had a really good list. We had 2 Nobel Prize winners, 3 Oscar winners, and a nominee, a Booker Prize winner, a poet laureate, several blue plaques. So I think it merits the term of a proper writer's trail. And that's where we started, and you can still see that online. You can download the map from the website. But then we invited people via chiswickw4.com to send in their favourite Chiswick books or Chiswick writers, and we would see how we got on. So we started slowly. When we got to 250, that was when the Observer, I persuaded a friend on the Observer. I said, we've just reached 250. Somebody on Twitter, indeed Val Bott from the William Hogarth Trust, had tweeted, can any other suburb boast this number of writers? So the Observer said, so what started as a Twitter boast has now become this huge, great timeline. So that was the moment, and they wrote the headline. If I'd thought of it, I would never have dared even ask for it, but Chiswick may be the UK's most literary location. And that appears on our Twitter and our Facebook, and we will never ever take that down, I think. We thought that would probably be it. I didn't think there'd be many more after that. We got to 400, and totally by coincidence, and this is totally not engineered, our writers number 400 and 401 were Ant and Dec. And the reason for that was because we'd done a Christmas quiz with lots of questions from the timeline. And one of the people who'd answered it, the one who actually won, one of the few questions they got wrong was, it was originally, the answer was meant to be Morecambe and Wise, but they put Ant and Dec. I didn't know Ant and Dec had written this book. So I then went online. Once I realised they'd written their autobiography, I thought, well, they qualify. So they literally were 400 and 401, and we're now up to 425. We've got the wonderful Brentford and Chiswick Local History Society. they are now feeding lots of much better researched information in there that we're going to be adding to it. And earlier this year, we started a timeline of Ealing writers and books, which is an offshoot. They've already got to 200, but they are using the whole of the borough of Ealing, and I think that's a bigger space, really. But anyway, we're delighted with how it's gone. We hope that everybody will delve into it and find things they didn't know.
And where's the best place to find the Chiswick timeline? Is that through the book festival?
Go on the festival website, and again, along the top, there are 2 or 3 subheads, and just click Writer's Trail. And if you go into Writer's Trail, because it's grown like Topsy, there is now a page how to find your way round the Chiswick timeline of writers' books. But the other thing that we did, and this actually has worked brilliantly, is as well as the Writer's Trail, we have got some writers' tales. And this is fleshing out some of those better known writers, but also with anecdotes from people who have written to us and sent them in. So, for example, Marina, I'll move on to from that one. I'll come back to that. J.G. Ballard's daughter, who is an artist, Faye Ballard, she emailed to say that he loved walking in Chiswick House and Gardens with his family, and that she had drawn pictures in pencil taken from photographs of her and her father and her mother in Chiswick House grounds. And you know that it's Chiswick House grounds because the Sphinx is there. And those are up on our website, so you can see these wonderful drawings. And she talks about how she got those photos and so on. So that's lovely. It was Marina Vasey, whose name I was struggling for. Marina Vasey, the wife of Lord Vasey, she emailed me to say that they were the people who secured the blue plaque to E.M. Forster, which is on Arlington Park Mansions. And so she tells that story, how that happened. She met E.M. Forster when she was a student at Oxford. So she talks about that, and she talks about how they got the blue plaque. So again, we are building lots of lovely tales about those Chiswick writers. And I mean, it will go on and on.
Yeah, it's a lovely way of doing it, fleshing out the legends, as it were, adding a little bit to it. Oh, this is brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Torin. It's Torin Douglas, who is the director of the Chiswick Book Fair, and the best place to find out festival. I do apologise. Go to chiswickbookfestival.net.
That's it, yeah. And it's all there.
chiswickbookfestival.net. Thank you so much for your time, Torin, and we'll do it again next year. And hopefully we'll be able to shake hands soon somewhere on Chiswick High Road.
Indeed, but thank you for having me, Nick. It's been great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for your time. I'm Nick Hennegan. We're on the Maverick Theatre YouTube page, but mainly this is Literary London on Resonance 104.4 FM. I'll see you next time.